afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today and taking time out of the busy schedules. I have just 2 minutes to introduce everybody to each other and to say thanks for coming along. For those of you who I haven't met or don't know, I'm Eva Boyle. I'm a member of the FMNI board and a current chairperson. So I've been involved with the charity for about 7 years, and I have to do the important arrangements around fires and hashtags, and if there is an evacuation today or an emergency bell, we stay in our places and the ushering team in the assembly will come and make sure that we find our way to the nearest exit, so no panic, there's no planned drills. Today is a really important day for Family Mediation Northern Ireland. A day we hoped to mark over a year ago when we reached our 20th birthday, and then COVID arrived and has stayed. So whilst today is a very much scaled down event, we want everyone to be safe, and we decided that just prior to the most recent change in COVID advice that we should not let another year pass without marking the significance of FMNI reaching its 21st birthday. So thank you for coming along and being part of that. I have the particular honour today of welcoming and thanking both the Minister of Justice and Naomi Long and John Gillen, new Chair of the Health Committee, who has sponsored the event today and helped us have today's celebration in this remarkable building and in this room. In particular, I also really need to welcome and thank all of those who have agreed to take part in our celebration today, as well as Minister Long and Colin Gilden. We have input from Sir John Gillen, some parents who have agreed to share their experience of working with Family Mediation Northern Ireland, our mental health champion, and Marc Bailie from the Family Policy Unit in the Department of Health. On behalf of the board, I would like to extend a particularly warm welcome to the founder of FMNI, Sheena Bell. Thank you for coming along. It's lovely to have you here, and I wonder, did you imagine 21 years ago that FMNI services would still be so vital in 2021 and 22? Families and relationships have changed a lot over the last 21 years, and the need for professional family mediation services is now more important than ever it has been. We have a very short agenda for this lunchtime. If you can spare less than an hour, we'll have you out of here. We really appreciate the pressure on the executive and every MLA at the minute, and we acknowledge that whilst our celebration is very significant for FMNI, it would not be able to be everybody's top entry in the diary for today. But a special thank you does go to Minister Long and Conjure for making the time. In terms of today's business, the board members of FMNI strongly welcome all of the commitments made by both the Departments of Health and Justice in the Joint Action Plan, which you'll hear more about today, and we welcome the reassurances about commitment to family mediation going forward. We acknowledge the support for the service, and I have to also pay tribute to the professionalism of all the family mediators, some of whom are here today, and what they do for the lives of parents who are separating and children. And whilst Minister Swan was unable to speak today, he did send correspondence, and I know Marc will address some of that later. It was particularly welcome from the board to receive that correspondence and hear about the ongoing commitment of the Department of Health to mediation as a means of resolving family disputes. We'll hear more about the Health and Justice Private Family Law Early Resolution Action Plan later. As I said, we don't intend to detain you very long at all, and I would now like to hand over to the Chair of the Assembly's Health Committee, Colin Gilden, MLA, to say a few words.
Emer, and thank you all. I'm delighted to have been able to make it, even if only briefly today, and just to explain that actually the Health Committee is ongoing at present, and we have suspended to allow me to come up to make some remarks. I was delighted to sponsor the event, and I think it's a reflection of the view in the committee that this is an important area of work, and one that I think we all welcome progress on. I am delighted to be joined by Sheena, as you mentioned, the founder of FMNI, and also my colleague Naomi, and I see we have been joined there in recent months by Siobhan, mental health champion as well. So I want to just very briefly wish you all the very best for the meeting today, and to acknowledge the fact that there has been this recognition as a result of the Gillen review of the need for cooperative working and all of the important connections that flow from making that a particular focus. In my previous life before representative politics, I was a social worker, and I have to say I'm very conscious of the fact that family breakdown and family disputes are a painful reality of life, but one that we all fully understand are something that exists for people and that need to be dealt with. I think I see where we're joined there by my colleague Paula Bradshaw as well from the committee there. So, recognising that it is a reality, I think then you need to decide how you're going to deal with it. And I think that dealing and addressing with these issues through the confrontational court system is not always the best approach. It is unfortunately necessary at times, but I think we all would welcome the realisation that in the first instance, and ideally, that what we can do is sit down on behalf of children who are impacted, that we can sit down together as adults and work our way in a mediated way to deal with the breakdown or deal with the changes that are being brought forward in a way that is in the interests of children principally. And I think that's the key thing behind FMNI. It's the key thing that I would certainly support. And I think the more that we do that on a cross-departmental basis and recognising the wide impacts that these things can have, the better we will be able to meet the needs of children and the need of family members in that respect. So I want to wish you all the very best for the rest of the meeting. I want to apologise for not being able to stay longer and to contribute and to hear from what I'm sure will be extremely interesting contributions from Justice Gillen and everyone else at today's meeting. So Gordon Albert, Tafacha Rogue, as Chief Administrative, thank you very much.
My husband and I separated in 2014 when my two children were 6 and 8. We had a pretty poor relationship at that time. There was a lot of anger, distrust, frustration arising from all the issues that led to the separation. One of the biggest challenges was a change in routine for the children, as we really struggled to find a routine that would work for both of us. It was really unsettling for the children, and seeing the difficult relationship between their parents whenever we were handing them over was pretty stressful for them. At that stage, I didn't really know an awful lot about the actual process of mediation, but I did know that I was very keen to avoid the court process. All I could imagine was my children being placed in a position where they would have to go to court and choose one parent over another. It just sounded like such a dreadful thing to do to them. Other friends had also told me about how going to court had made the relationship with their ex-partners even worse, which had made it really difficult to co-parent effectively afterwards. I'll be honest, I was a bit apprehensive about it. The relationship with my ex-husband was still extremely tense, and I wasn't really looking forward to being in the same room as him. I was worried that one or both of us would become really angry and it would just end up as another fight. At the first meeting, the mediator met with each of us individually first and then together to make sure we were clear about what mediation could help us with and what it couldn't. It wasn't a counselling service, but it could help us reach agreement on a number of areas around our separation, and we agreed we would focus then on our two children. The mediator told us we were extremely unlikely to end up with a situation that was ideal for both of us, but we should be aiming to agree something that we could both live with, and it was really helpful to have that set out from the outset to manage our expectations from the whole thing. In total, I think we had about 4 or 5 sessions. In preparation for each meeting, we were asked to think about and write out proposals for access to the children that we could then discuss. At the meetings then, we talked about each of the proposals and tried to identify why they would or wouldn't work for each of us. And then we were asked to refine our proposals for the next session to reflect what we'd discussed on each other's views. Throughout the sessions, the mediator helped us both to stay calm and focused on reaching agreement for the children, rather than just ending up fighting about the wider issues. While the mediation process was really stressful, it was less stressful for me, and more importantly, less stressful for my children than going to court would have been. It stopped the distrust and anger from that time escalating any further, which I believe would have had a long-lasting impact on our ability to co-parent effectively. It also provided a much more flexible arrangement than would otherwise have been the case, and provided us with a foundation for agreeing arrangements ourselves for Christmas and holiday times. The agreement that was reached at that time is still in place now, 7 years later. Both of us are fully involved in all aspects of the lives of our children. I would really recommend the services of Family Mediation NI to anyone in a similar situation to help maintain a relationship with an ex-partner and build the foundations for parenting together effectively in the future.
So our journey of divorce started. There were a lot of tensions under the surface, a lot of upset, a lot of anger, a lot of blaming, a lot of defensiveness, and our children were 4 and 6 at the time. The reason I instigated mediation was because we needed to find a platform to figure out how did we go forward with the parenting plan for the children and overnights. We didn't know how to do this, and there was fear and anxiety on both of our sides, and it was very heightened and very real. And I felt that the only way that we could do this was with mediation, so that we both had a voice and we could both hear each other, because at that point I don't think either of us were able to hear each other. I felt when we went in that our mediator was just wonderful. She just put us at ease. She held the tension that was in the room, and she allowed us to be able to speak and encouraged us. And when one of us got stuck, she explored it a bit and helped us to hear each other. And if she could hear that we weren't hearing each other, she stayed on that point until we did. One of the things I found extremely useful was that she used a flip chart to do the parenting plan so we could see it. And then we went away each week with it on paper to go, right, how will this work? It gave us the chance to find a way to come to an agreement that we couldn't have come to on our own. We couldn't have, we wouldn't have. And we both found a voice in this process. 4 or 5 years on, we are still doing that parenting plan. That parenting plan that our mediator helped us to set in place is still our main plan. We have flexibility and we change if each other's needs change for overnights or different things, but we still have that parenting plan, and it took away so much tension and heightened emotions that were all on the negative side of the scale. So it allowed the children to have security, it allowed them to have routine, it allowed them to know what they were doing when they were doing it, and it allowed each of us to know that there was some sort of structure and routine. So my experience of mediation is that it has been an invaluable part of our journey. I don't know how we would have come to where we are without it, and I don't know how long it would have taken, but it would have taken far longer than 4 weeks, let me tell you. It is the best gift in the whole world because it gives each parent a voice, it gives the children a voice even though they're not there, because they get to be put first in the middle of the table, and sometimes that's quite a difficult thing to negotiate in the middle of emotions. My experience has been nothing but really wonderful, and I look back and I'm so grateful for the chance that we had to avail of this amazing service.
The family mediation service came about after I spoke to a solicitor after a separation. My son at the time was very young, and it wasn't very long after the separation that legal options were being explored, and it was then that we were directed to family mediation. Initially I was quite apprehensive about going because it meant I had to be in the same room as my ex-partner, and things were still very raw and quite fresh. It took a couple of meetings at the beginning to work out if this was going to be right for us, but we were both willing to engage, and the first couple of sessions were done separately in different rooms. I felt at ease that I was with someone who was a trained professional, someone who was listening to me, and it was nice to feel listened to. It was after a couple of sessions that it was recommended that we both come together in the same room. And through multiple sessions, we then were able to come up with the bare bones of an agreement for when I would have contact with my son. We probably did about 5 of the 6 sessions before it became a dead end. And the reason it got that way is because I don't think my ex-partner wanted to make any more concessions. The experience of going to family mediation was an important step. Come to know now that the courts, they see so many people every day, they don't really know you or who you are, and that was the difference with family mediation, is that the people there, they knew me by name. To have a professional oversee communication, not so much as a referee, but someone who helps you understand where you're going right and where you're going wrong in the way you're communicating with your ex-partner. So certainly I would recommend it for many different reasons.
We've used family mediation on 2 occasions, and in both of these situations we have had real positive experiences. Although as parents we have a constructive and positive relationship for our child, naturally there sometimes can be disagreements over certain things, and for us, mediation has been really good in resolving them. I think most recently we had hit a bit of a brick wall around contact time. What had worked really well in the past had to be adapted due to our changing circumstances, and we're struggling to implement an agreement that not only suited our daughter, but also us as separated parents. Due to the previous success we had received with Family Mediation NI, we were both open to using mediation again. The process in itself is really simple. The first session was really setting the scene around how far we were currently from agreement and where we would like to get to. I felt this was a real positive way at looking at things, as it identified that although there was disagreement, there was also a shared desire between both parents to come to agreement in the future. The mediator was great. Not only was she totally impartial, but she encouraged us to see the other parents' reasoning behind their thought process. Our first session finalised with an agreement that both parents decided to trial for a 4-week period. Naturally, it wasn't either of the parents' initial idea, but over the course of the hour session, both of us had come to a compromise that had our child's best interests at heart, but also worked for both parents. I believe this compromise would not have happened was it not for the support of the mediator. Not only did they help each other's parents see the other's viewpoint, the mediator also provided experience in dealing with similar issues previously. Fortunately, our trial period was successful, and the second mediation meeting talked around the previous weeks, what had worked well, and did we need to change anything. Both parents agreed to make slight alterations, but on the whole the plan remained the same, and we agreed that this would be the plan moving forward. I can't recommend Family Mediation NI enough, and particularly the mediators we have used throughout the process. The support has been crucial in creating a constructive relationship between both parents, and now we have a great plan for the future.
Well, thank you, Emer, and it's good to be here with you all today. I would want to begin, first of all, just by saying how pleased I am to be able to be here and help celebrate the 21st birthday of Family Mediation NI. There have been a number of big birthdays actually to celebrate in the justice sector recently. We had the 40th anniversary of victim support, we had the 50th anniversary of NIACRO. I have a big birthday myself next month. I wish it was my 21st. Unfortunately, on that score, I have more in common with NIACRO. However, it is good to be here and to celebrate the great work that's being done. And it was also a pleasure to meet with Sheena Bell as we were just waiting for the event to start and just hear a bit about how the organisation started and to meet one of the founder members. So thank you for that opportunity. The impactful testimony that we have just heard, I think, emphasises what all of us in this room already knew of the important contribution that Family Mediation NI has made to the development of family mediation services and the improved outcomes that countless families have experienced as a result of the hard work, dedication and commitment of your organisation to quality service and to minimising the impact of separation on families. I can't commend you highly enough on what you have achieved and the importance of what you do. The early intervention and having a child-centric, low-conflict approach should form the basis of any family dispute resolution mechanism. And the work of Family Mediation NI and others in this field, some of whom I know are represented here today, has proven that case. Your work has shown that, in appropriate cases, a mediated child-centric approach can give rise to much better outcomes for families and can improve exponentially the experiences of children. I want, as Justice Minister, to build on that good work. The best possible outcomes for children should be the primary objective
of the justice system. That's why the Joint Private Family Law Early Resolution Action Plan I launched earlier this year with Minister Swan prioritises action on alternative dispute resolution to ensure that it becomes a central component of the justice system, that parents use mediation as the first step in resolving their disputes rather than defaulting to court. In some cases, court is the right place for issues to be resolved, but I think what you have shown for many years is that there is often a better way. For many, the imaginative solutions, the sense of self-determination and agency, of consent, and the durability that can derive from early mediated settlements can save a lot of heartache, effort, time and money for both parties, and crucially, can reduce the anxiety and upset that an adversarial process can have on children involved in a breakup. Mediation can also be a more immediate and proportionate tool for resolving difficulties on a rolling basis, and as such can help alleviate many of the types of pressures which emerged during the pandemic, for example. That's why I want to ensure that we embrace a full range of dispute resolution options that are available, that the system enables the appropriate mechanism for each type of dispute to be easily identified and easily accessed. There is, of course, much work to be done before mediation and other forms of ADR embed more thoroughly in the justice system. There are barriers to overcome. The right infrastructure and right models for this jurisdiction need to be in place, and issues of training, accreditation and quality control also need to be considered to ensure the integrity of the justice system and to provide assurance and value for money in publicly funded services. If mediation is to become more widely used, we need to begin to take steps to address those barriers, and I hope that the Joint Justice and Health Action Plan is a good step forward in that regard. Many families still end up in court because they see that as the only option for their family, rather than recognising that in many cases it is the option of last resort. Initial steps under the action plan recognise that awareness and information will therefore be key to enhancing the use of alternative dispute resolution. They focus very much on enhancing information for parents in dispute so that they're aware of all of their options, that they know where to seek information and that they know where to seek support. I'm also examining the feasibility of introducing an education programme for parents and inter-court mediation on a pilot basis so that we can begin to build the evidence we need to address the barriers to the wider use of alternative dispute resolution. I do recognise that the initial steps under the action plan are small. However, I hope that they are the building blocks in a process of continuous development and improvement. The plan is intended as an evolving exercise. It will progress and develop as we learn from the initial actions and from our concept testing pilots. We also want to learn from you. You're the experts. The action plan has been informed by Sir John Gillen's detailed and thorough review of the civil and family justice system. It has also been informed by what you and other stakeholders have told us. We're very grateful for those contributions, but we want to continue to engage proactively with you as we move forward. We hope shortly to convene a reference group to help us shape the action plan, and we want to get the next steps right. I hope that some of you can and will participate in that critical work. Enhancing the use of mediation is not something that Minister Swan and I can deliver alone. It will require support and collaboration, but I believe that collectively with our justice system partners and with alternative dispute resolution providers and with others who provide support services to families, we can achieve that goal and ensure the best outcome for families in Northern Ireland. I think it is encouraging that the law profession also now recognise the importance of mediation and alternative dispute resolution. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of opening their new facility for alternative dispute resolution at the Law Society. It was also very encouraging to hear at that event from the new Lady Chief Justice, who is herself a very strong advocate for mediation in family cases. I think that, if you like, your stars are aligning after 21 years, and hopefully progress will be much more swift than perhaps it has been to this point. I want to thank you for your patience for 21 years, for continuing to do what you do in such a thoughtful and considered way. I recognise that many of the people who are here today are people who have benefited from the services that you have provided, and I'm sure that their gratitude too will be noted as part of your celebrations today. It is a huge milestone to turn 21, but I believe that there are much bigger years ahead, many more of them, for the incredible work that you do, and hopefully that you will see real progress as you move beyond 21 and gain all that additional life experience. Thank you.
So good afternoon everybody, and thank you so much Family Mediation Northern Ireland for inviting me to share your 21st birthday celebrations. Thanks for all that you're doing to support families. I'm going to spend a few minutes, just when I've got this opportunity, to talk about the importance of what you're doing for relationships and mental health. And I'm going to focus on the mental health of young people and the next generation, because it's been a topic of conversation across the news today, and I'm just off talk back, that's why I was a bit late. So I'm really going to explain what the connections are and why the work that you do is so vital for the next generation and beyond. So the evidence has been mounting for over 30 years of the important influence that childhood experiences have on mental health throughout the lifespan. One of the most important pieces of research that led us to understand the importance of those childhood years was Bailie's 1998 Adverse Childhood Experiences study. This is known as the ACEs study, and it demonstrated that adversities in childhood are much more common than we previously acknowledged, and that they had a really powerful correlation with adult mental health and also adult physical health, and even half a century later. So the original list of ACEs that was in that study included all the usual suspects of abuse and neglect, but interestingly it also included family dysfunction and parental divorce and separation. The reason why adversities are so harmful, and some commentators would use the term toxic, is rooted in neurodevelopmental biology, and it's because the brain's growing at such an enormous rate throughout childhood, and particularly in those first few years, those first 3 years or 1,000 days. So it's during this time of peak neuroplasticity that the pathways that are formed there influence the biological processes that support the person's survival. And the stress response pathway is a really important part of all of that as well. So stress in childhood influences how the brain is wired, if you like, and the speed and the nature of the stress response. And we triggers are wired in there in childhood as a way of keeping that child safe. So if something happens in childhood, that can be encoded almost at a subconscious level and reactivated later. And of course this allows us to survive and have babies, and it's evolved, but it's not good for us in the modern world. So children who grow up with a sense of safety are less reactive to stress. They can remain calm and focused when they're under pressure as adults. And this is what we mean by resilience, and it's what protects us from developing mental health problems whenever we're faced with stress as adults later in life. So a reactive stress response means that we're in that fight or flight mode more frequently, more often, and it's that creates the changes in feelings and behaviour that are characteristic of the most common mental illness. So the relationships that we have with our caregivers and families are absolutely crucial in those early years. And whenever we're growing up, particularly in those first few years of primary school, we're co-regulating along with our adults, with our parents and our carers. The relationships help us feel psychologically safe, and they're the template for all of our relationships. So we are co-regulating with our parents, and we're taking our lead from them at that age. Any disruption to those relational attachments does impact on the child's stress settings in such a way that can be detrimental to mental health. So that's why breakups, losses in those early years, they have the potential to cause problems later in life. So early relationships are vital. Adversity is bad for children, and parental separation and conflict is not good, but that is only one part of the story. We're now starting to recognise that the impact of childhood is much more complex than we first thought. That ACEs study is criticised because it promotes a very simplistic view of the world, like this dose-response relationship between adversities and later illness. And this idea of counting adversities is being critiqued because it pathologises normal experiences and fails to account for the differences in why some children flourish despite adversity, and indeed how many children and adults grew in spite of or even as a result of trauma. So it doesn't really explain resilience in any way, and it certainly doesn't explain post-traumatic growth. So now we're here in 2021 and we realise if we work in the area of trauma, that first of all, that adversity is unavoidable, and that most adversities don't lead to illness, and that post-traumatic growth is possible. The most recent study of the mental health of children in Northern Ireland found that almost half of the population of children here experience one or more adversity, and the most common adversity experienced by nearly 36% of children was parental separation. So this is an experience that is so common that it must surely need to be reclassified as part of the normal natural trajectory of life, and it is not necessarily bad or good. It is what it is, and different people will view it and experience it in different ways. And in fact, the population study that I worked on in 2005 also found that people who experienced no adversity in childhood still had a moderate risk of mental illness after trauma, and that some adversity was actually beneficial because it built resilience and built coping skills. This finding was also mirrored in a study of our college students, where we found that where parents were over-controlling or over-indulgent and overprotective, the children and most young people had a higher risk of poor emotional regulation and coping skills, which were characteristics of poor mental health. So when we're trying to help our young people, it's so vital that we avoid pathologising common life events and consider how families and communities' hardships can be restructured as opportunities for modelling problem solving, negotiation, conflict resolution and coping. The studies are showing that the proportion of our young people suffering from stress-related conditions and poor mental health is certainly rising. And these problems impede learning, they impact on our education, they impact on our health system, and of course the justice systems are charged with managing the behavioural difficulties that result from this. So mental illness and the behaviours that we're talking about result from a maladaptive response to stress, and they are a huge challenge to society. And these externalising behaviours that we're talking about are manifestations of fear, anxiety and trauma, and they also result in social violence and are a threat to our peace process too. They lead to illness, human pain and more suffering, and they result in us harming others and impair our ability to see others' perspectives and to find creative solutions to the major problems of our time, which right now are global pandemics, sectarian conflict, climate change and poverty. So we need a generation of young people who are self-aware, who can manage conflict and who can negotiate. So conflict, separation and loss are a natural and normal part of life that needs to be navigated. And resilience in our children means that we give them the skills to be able to negotiate, problem solve and manage conflict. We learn those skills by mirroring how the adults in our lives do it. And as with many aspects of life, it's about showing young people how to do it rather than simply telling them how to do it. So by supporting families to navigate separation, to solve their problems and develop their own co-parenting plans, Family Mediation Northern Ireland are shaping the lives and social skills of that next generation. They're equipping them with skills to navigate their own relationships and to set and achieve goals. And that is such an important part of creating a healthy, peaceful and prosperous Northern Ireland. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Marc, unfortunately, this morning wasn't feeling too well, so I'm just going to read a statement that he had sent us. This is Marc, Bailie, Family Policy Unit, Department of Health. Firstly, please pass on my sincere thanks to everyone at Family Mediation NI for their dedication and commitment to helping families to resolve conflict in a positive and constructive way throughout the past 21 years. We have seen some families come through mediation with very positive relationships
between all parties where an alternative method of resolution may well have led to relationship breakdown. The Department of Health remains committed to the provision of mediation as a method of resolving family disputes, and we look forward to working in partnership with FMNI and others to take forward work on the actions contained within the new Private Family Law Early Resolution Action Plan. The plan recognises the impact uncertainty and conflict can have on children's well-being and commits to reducing the negative impacts of parental separation on children. It has dual aims of improving outcomes for families by diverting disputes which don't need to be adjudicated by a court or other form of resolution, and aiding earlier resolution of disputes which do come before the courts. It includes a number of key actions, including working with key partners to map and publicise existing information supports for separating parents, supporting the delivery of pre-court mediation services, and continuing to invest in specialist social workers to support the courts in ensuring the interests of children are central to decision making and resolution of parental disputes. We hope to speak to FMNI and other key stakeholders before Christmas to begin this partnership working. So now we will move on to the interview with Sir John Gillen, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. Thank you.
So John, underpinning your 2017 recommendations seems to be the need to embed a cultural change to support dysfunctional separated parental relationships, providing outcome-based programmes with a one-stop shop approach. Given that cultural change is challenging, what steps do you see need to happen to begin this process, and who needs to lead on this?
Yeah, cultural changes are always difficult. They're the most difficult changes to bring about. And the truth of the matter is that you have to recognise that family relationships involve the most intimate of relations that one can conceive of. They're private and they're difficult to police. And therefore trying to resolve those problems is a major difficulty. And I think that the key to it is to bring about changes in the law, because I believe that law can influence culture. We've changed the culture in a number of different areas in the law, and this is a classic example of it. And therefore, for example, if you look in England, they have the Section 10 of the Children and Families Act 2014, which ensures that all litigants who intend to bring proceedings involving children have to attend mediation, or have to consider rather mediation, before issuing any private law proceedings. In New Zealand, they have a parenting through separation scheme, which means that parents are obliged to attend, along with each other, free sessions in which there's a counsellor and a psychologist there who will give them real information about the full consequences of what they are doing in terms of their children. Now, the one has to look at the question of mandatory attendances. Will people do that? Well, if the position is that proceedings are not going to be issued unless these steps are taken, then I think you will find a change, because in essence, the thing that always gripped me when I was a family judge for a number of years was that essentially these are really decent people who happen to be separating. Life has just taken a bad turn for them. And they don't realise the dangers that lie in the wake of that for their children. We've got to help them change.
Following on from that, you refer in your 2017 report to the need for accessible family mediation. How do you see a professional model with high quality, standardised practice, monitoring and accountability being integrated across all providers?
Well, I think there has to be some kind of controlled supervision and guidance. This area of mediation, I think, is a specialist field. It is not open to well-meaning amateurs. I think that mediators need to be really professional, really well informed, and be monitored. And therefore I think that there should be some form of licensing of mediation groups if they're to obtain government funding and government money. Government money is precious. It is difficult to obtain and it must be well spent. It should not be granted unless those who are carrying out those mediations are well informed and are professional. So therefore I think there should be standards set, probably by the Department of Justice, probably by the Department of Health, before government funding is given to mediation groups.
Thank you. So John, you made reference there to your lifetime of experience in the law, and particularly more recently in family law. Can you provide our audience with some insight into private family law cases or scenarios that support the argument for clear benefits of family mediation and the inappropriateness of adversarial litigation on the mental health of children and parents?
I think during my time, I was 6 years as a senior family judge in Northern Ireland. I think during that time, the greatest difficulty that I encountered was the intractable contact problems, where mum and dad had sadly split up, and the rupture that was caused unfortunately spilled over into the way that the children were treated. And so there was one parent or another parent that went to war with the other one, and the difficulty was that children were right in the middle, and the parties who were suffering more than any other were the children. And again, I firmly believe that was because the warring parties had lost sight of what they were doing to their children. They were so keen to score points over one another. One had behaved maybe very badly and merited all kinds of acrimony that was arising. But sadly, in visiting that retribution upon Party A, Party B was damaging profoundly the children. And I think that something like mediation, where people are obliged before they bring proceedings to speak to a mediator, whether it be a psychologist or a counsellor or a trained mediator, and to explain to them just what the consequences are of this intractable behaviour. I think decent people will find that the penny drops, and that in most cases, I think you'll find that mediation before the court process has started, will, I think, solve a great number of problems. It won't solve everything. You'll always get aberrant people who cannot be controlled, but I think in most cases there's a classic example of where mediation would benefit not only them for their lives, but also, more importantly, their children.
Your review of civil and family law in 2017 was groundbreaking, innovative and forward-facing, with hundreds of recommendations across family law. What are your thoughts some 4 years later, with the lack of action regarding diversionary actions, plans to provide information support that encourage separated parents to manage their separation by engaging with mediation?
It saddens me greatly that greater activity has not been engendered in the wake of the reforms that I suggested. There is no doubt that there has been great delay in implementing these necessary changes. And until this is done, until these changes are made, we're going to keep on meeting the same problems that are endemic in the family justice system and have been endemic for decades. And what one has to realise, what the government and what the Department of Justice and the Department of Health and so on has to appreciate, is that you need to invest to save. The amount of public money that is wasted in the family justice system, with huge delays in cases being resolved, warring parties with solicitors and barristers on either side fighting the bit out, it's incomprehensible that we allow that to go on. And whereas if we invested in the kind of mediation that we're all, I think, present here today are in favour of, that is investing to save. You will bring about resolutions that are more lasting and durable. You will bring about swifter justice. You will reduce the number of cases. You will reduce the amount of legal aid invested in lawyers in fighting these cases out. And until the departments grasp that issue, until the government in responsible grasps that issue, I'm afraid that change is not going to happen. And so therefore, dare I say it, I think the real problem lies with the failure of government to grasp the nettle. It needs to be given greater attention and greater funding, greater resources. And the way to deal with that, I think, is to find champions for the cause of family justice in particular, and champions for the cause of what we're talking about largely now, mediation in childcare and in the separation of parents. And so I think that the way to change this is for the groups like yours, societies like yours, to find champions who will stand up and speak about this, who will speak about it in the assembly, who will people will contact their assembly members, so that there will be a voice now that for too long has been either silenced or muffled. We're on the cusp of change in society about the way we deal with childcare, with family justice.
And just one more question in relation to the UNCRC and the child's rights in relation to family breakdown. Who do you see would be best placed to champion the rights of the child to a healthy and safe relationship with both parents post-separation?
That's a broad question, and it requires a broad approach. I'm a firm believer in training. The judiciary needs more training in this area. The barristers and solicitors who act in these cases need more training in this area. These issues and the rights of the child have to become an absolute priority throughout this. And I believe that the days of the Bar Council and the Law Society doing their own training has to change. Good people like yourselves have to be brought in. We have to have professionals brought in to deal with these matters, to highlight the rights of children, so that through the family justice system, the priority of children comes not only from other cases and from people reading the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, but it comes from the pores of those who are conducting these cases, judges who are hearing them, barristers and solicitors who are acting in them. And that involves very much, again, the input from groups such as yours, professional mediators, professional people who are bent on ensuring that problems of family justice, that the rights of children are not confined to court problems, but bring in problem-solving courts who look outside the court arena and who look to other avenues for processing these cases.
Congratulations, FMNI, on your 21st birthday. We are so delighted here in MII to be your partners and friends and colleagues and to support you in the work that you do. You have done an extraordinary job over the last 21 years for all of your service users and providers all across Northern Ireland. And indeed, you yet again raised your game through COVID. So from your friends in MII, we wish you a very happy birthday. All 700 plus members of us are delighted with your success, and we wish you a further 21 years of exceptional service. You have our support. Continue to be brilliant, and happy 21st birthday.
Hello, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Lorraine Bramwell and I'm a mediator, trainer and PPC here in England. I just wanted to say happy 21st celebrations to FMNI. I was involved with you all some years back now in some of the early training. I was involved in training family mediators before you had your own foundation training course. And we sort of stayed in touch over the years, mostly through the College of Mediators, where I and a number of people from FMNI have worked together for the development of the highest standards in mediation. It was lovely recently to get back involved as well with your current team, where we've been working together on developments in best practice. So I just wanted to say, have a great 21st celebrations today, and I hope you're all enjoying yourselves. Congratulations.
And I just want to say a few closing words, if you'd bear with me for a few minutes. I very much appreciate the Minister for Justice, Naomi, coming to help us to celebrate today, and of course mental health champion Professor Siobhan, and all of you former mediators and current mediators, and of course our founding member Sheena. I actually was going to mention Vi and Muriel and Susie Swan and the likes, and of course our own Pip Jaffa, who is part of that steering group back in the day and is currently still with us and contributing to the development of Family Mediation NI. It is really incredible to think that it is 21 years since Sheena and her colleagues, so 3 or 4 colleagues, that had the vision that others didn't have at the time and started delivering family mediation from a corner of Sheena's husband's architect's office in University Street, literally a corner of the office. But as so often is the case with charities, you will hear people talking about the day, excuse me, when they started, their idea came to them and they started literally in a broom cupboard. And there are lots of very well established charities in that situation today. So thanking all who established it, and the foundations of FMNI were well embedded when I came in 12 years ago. So together with the steering group, and who then became a board of trustees, they began to build working on building relationships with the Department of Health's Family Policy Unit and influenced the then 2008 strategic document, Families Matter. Sheena retired some years ago, so her legacy is very much shared with us today in some of the mediators who she trained, and we continue to be a training organisation to develop and build capacity of the training of the mediator panel. We continue to build on those relationships to be the voice of those who find themselves experiencing an out-of-control situation, whereby they find themselves in what is a transitionally vulnerable position. Many separated parents tell FMNI of their feelings on the phone and via email. They have had no control, they've lost control, they feel they can't get any control around their lives, they feel ostracised, they feel that no one is listening, and they may not be able to even spend time with their own children. Suddenly, they may not have a home to call their own. They may not even be able to attend work. They may feel frustrated with the system. They feel angry, anxious, and irritated. What we're hearing on the phones is that they think the system is stacked against them. We can provide an option, and we do. If they are not mediation ready, or if the other parent will not engage, which is often the case, we can provide information on other professional support services that may be more suited to their needs at this point. With FMNI door open when the timing is right and they are both ready. It is at this point that movement can happen. When they're being heard, having a voice, listening, really listening to the other parent, exploring a range of options with an impartial mediator in a safe space is an extremely empowering feeling. That is motivational and can drive individuals forward. The process is practical, future and child focused, and when assessed as appropriate, our specialist child inclusive mediators will meet with children and their voices can be fed into the parents' mediation meetings. You heard the optimistic and positive accounts earlier from some of our mums and dads, but it would be remiss of me, and indeed totally out of character, not to mention the dark side. Mediation in any environment is not a panacea for all ills. Many breakups are not suited to mediation, such as those that have long-term court-entrenched situations, violent relationships, and for those individuals who are not coping with the breakup, hoping for reconciliation, or indeed experiencing addiction and or mental health problems as a result. You've heard Professor Siobhan's thoughts on that and the reference to triggers and resilience. We believe that a large percentage of parents who still default to the courts would benefit from trying mediation and being surprised at what they can achieve when they become the decision makers. FMNI is not a counselling agency. Apologies, I have to say that everywhere I go. It is unfortunate that even those in other professions tend to use the terms counselling and mediation interchangeably. And of course, they're completely different professional disciplines. I just want to also just make reference to other aspects of the service whilst I have this platform. We also offer intergenerational mediation, developed by Polly, who is down one of those tables there. She is an accredited family mediator, an accredited elder mediator, the only one in this jurisdiction, and a professional practice consultant. And then there is the finance-only mediation, which is funded by the clients themselves, and mediator Rosalind, again here today, has this year led on refreshment training in this area. And I hope you get the chance to speak to some of the mediators when you're here. I want to pay tribute to all mediators who've worked with FMNI over the last 21 years. Many have come and went, but we're continually replenishing. And in 2019, we got a bursary from the Department of Health to help us train further 9 mediators. COVID interrupted that training, so we're still currently supporting and working with them. The mediator's expertise and commitment has been a driving force and raised the bar in terms of professional standards. So do, if you can, grab a mediator before you leave today, please. You will have heard the personal experience of Sir John Gillen during his 6 years in family courts, and it is indeed sobering to hear of how intractable child contact problems can spill over into the child's life with immeasurable long-term negative impacts. Our adverse childhood experiences, again, the Professor Siobhan alluded to, and it's very good to have that information reiterated today. We are also heartened to hear this week the Department of Education is intending to deliver trauma-informed training to teachers and other school staff. We are aware of this because teachers have told us that they are often the first adult to identify a change at home based on the child's behaviour. We hope this training supports teachers and can lead to referral pathways for parents to appropriate services, and FMNI may be one of them. We really do acknowledge the cross-departmental work on the Joint Action Plan as alluded to by Marc and the Minister for Justice, all related to Sir John Gillen's recommendations, as we believe passionately that his recommendations can really change how we approach family breakdown and estrangement in the future. As a society, we must accept that in the 21st century, family types are as diverse as our population, and many parents are in blended families, unmarried partnerships, and indeed some parents have no parenting history at all. It makes sense to develop our services to meet the needs of all when these parent relationships break down. At the heart of all we do is the UNCRC Article 9, safe and healthy relationships for a child and both parents. I want to say thank you to FMNI staff, Emma and Pat, who joined us in the last 2 years and had a real bumpy ride into FMNI via COVID, and Carmel also for all their commitments to the service delivery and working with me to maintain standards and the reputation of FMNI. I want to pay a special tribute to Emer Boyle, our chair, who is stepping down from the road and will be greatly missed. She has been of enormous support to me and the board and led with confidence and professionalism in the interest of championing the needs of our clients and raising the profile of services. And all that remains for me to do now is to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to help us with our much reduced mini nod to 21 years of FMNI. And to put the call out for champions, to echo Sir John Gillen, one way to effect change is to encourage others to champion the cause and speak out with confidence on behalf of children caught in the middle. Thank you.